Good morning, Blue Jays fans, and welcome to Jay's Latest. I am your host, Craig Borden. Good morning, and I'm hoping it's a lot nicer where you're at today because it's was a gross night in Queens last night at Citi Field for the Blue Jays playing taking on the Mets. Weather was cold, damp, disgusting. It was barely above zero, so it's all that kind of horrible fun that we had to deal with at Citi Field for the Blue Jays players last night. But it did kick a one thing in the right direction because this ended up becoming a fun pitchers duel for the Toronto Blue Jays and the Mets. And Chris Bassett obviously was the biggest one of that whole thing. But the Blue Jays do lose this one 3-2 in late innings, walk-off fashion, and a lot of it was due to just some poorly timed pieces. Unfortunately, we are going to have to talk about George Springer here in the gross weather part because you could definitely tell that the winning hit by Francisco Lindor, or no, sorry, I take that back. Lindor had the final sac fly, but leading up to that, Jesse Winker hits his second triple of the game, and it was a ball that was hit kind of almost right at but over George Springer's head. And him trying to pivot and get into the right arrangement to catch this ball and make an amazing catch did not work out so well for George Springer. I have not seen any news of what is currently going on with George Springer, but the guess is he's going to be missing some games. They haven't said if he's going to land on the IL or not, but they're calling it back spasms. Nothing in an MRI was shown. So George Springer will hopefully get back in the lineup soon. Back spasms does not spell good for the success that he's had so far at the beginning of this season. As a person that's had back spasms before, that just sucks and it doesn't feel good. Um, I hope he gets back and healthy. I was glad it wasn't a concussion or a shoulder or something because the way he hit the wall was really awkward. As painful as the loss that it turned into literally a couple pitches later. And it was just not a good night for the Blue Jays on the late part of this game, watching the Mets come back for runs in the last two innings and walking it off. So the Blue Jays end up having 10 hits, which would lead you to believe that maybe we were doing pretty good at the plate. Yes, we were doing a good job at getting batter runners around to the bases, but we could not close to save the deal. But we'll talk about that in a minute. First things first, we have to talk about where credit is needed and due is the fact that Chris Bassett looks like a brand new guy. I don't know how much you guys saw him, but this might have been the best pitching outing I have seen Chris Bassett pitch. 6 2/3 innings, 4 hits, no earned runs, 9 strikeouts. That was the part that was mind boggling to me. Bassett is it for everything he's good at. Strikeouts is not one of his biggest strengths, and getting 9 strikeouts in 6 2/3 innings, that is pretty impressive. And he still managed to stay under 100 pitches. That was the other piece to this whole thing, is he was doing really, really well. Things I don't quite understand, we'll get to here in a second, but Chris Bassett did hold his old teammates to just baffling him. Like I said, scattering 4 hits is one thing, no walks. They had no idea what to do with him. And this is a team that actually has a lot of players that actually played with Chris Bassett a few years ago on it. So they know him, probably hit off him a bunch of times in batting practice. Bassett found a new way to spin it and keep it well off their barrels of their bats. So, but let's talk to the two issues from last night before we start talking about some good takeaways here. This bullpen, yeah, last night giving up 3 earned runs in the latter part of the game, like I mentioned. Bassett came out with, like I said, in the seventh inning. Jimmy Garcia ends up coming out and just nailing down that last out, gives up 1 hit and a walk, which is why he didn't return in the eighth inning. But Brandon Little comes out of the bullpen, gets 2 outs. But as I mentioned, gives up all the hits, the runs, everything, a walk, loaded the bases at a point, I believe, and just gave up the 2 earned runs. Tie ball game. It is what it is. But then Nick Sandlin throws the extra pitches and everything, and Hoffman comes out to try and nail it down. He gets 1 out, but then he gives up the sac fly to Francisco Lindor. So the question I have is this roster construction that we have in our current bullpen, is it going to be enough? John Schneider clearly has a man crush on Brandon Little, and I don't see why. I've seen some little flirts of good, but bringing the lefty in for the sake of bringing the lefty in is not going to get this done, I don't think. And that's where I think that John Schneider's got to find a new way to redeploy Brandon Little in these spots that are not leverage. And I don't know. It just seems odd. But what do I know? I'm not the manager. I'm trying to talk, I'm trying to help. But Brandon Little doesn't spell answer for me. And Nick Sandlin is not looking like the Nick Sandlin that we took from the Cleveland Indians. He's been rough this season to start. He's had a few good outings, and then he's had somebody scatter some runs. Somebody came in and helped him to get out of the inning, so on and so forth. My fear is that we have a better bullpen than last year, but we do not have a bullpen that is going to take this team to the playoffs without some help. And maybe that helps right down in Buffalo with some of the kids I've seen pitching, but maybe they got to play around here and figure out the cocktail that's going to work in this Blue Jays bullpen, because right now that has been a rough spot to watch. And I want to talk on the offensive side of the ball here really quick as we talk and close this thing out before we talk about today's game against the Mets at 1 o'clock to close out the series. This team is getting hits. It's not a miss. Like I said, they had 10 hits last night, and just let me run down the box score for you here, because this is the part that boggles me, and I don't really get it. Bo Bichette, 3 for 5 last night with an RBI. Vlad Jr., 2 for 5 with an RBI. Then 1 for 4 with Santander, 1 for 4 with Jimenez. Nothing from Kirk, nothing from Springer last night. Will Wagner ended up taking a walk, as he tends to, but he was over 3. Miles Straw with another decent performance with another 1 for 4 outing. He played some good defense. And then Alan Roden in the bottom spot has been a bright spot in this lineup. He went 2 for 3 again, but he scored both the runs. So him getting on base has been critical at the bottom of this lineup to be able to lead to runs for Bo and Vlad. And this is where I don't like the modern day roster lineup construction. When you load the Bo Bichette, the Vlad Juniors and whatnot all the way up at the top of the lineup, you have to almost later in the game rely on that number 8 and 9 slot being the ones that actually are the ones that set up the table for your mashers. It's great that they get a couple extra at bats, but if you're not getting anybody on in front of them, what is it worth? So to me, the regular lineup construction of having somebody like Jimenez bat leadoff and then Bo Vlad, spells a little bit more success. But maybe that's the old school guy in me, but it's just what it is. I just think it's really hard to score runs when you load everything like that. So the reason I say this has been a symptom of the Blue Jays for years now, especially the John Schneider era and the latter part of obviously Shatkins. So they have went for 2 for 10 last night again with runners in scoring position. And I read before this we were actually 0 for 92 with runners in scoring position. I don't know how true that is. I never actually looked it up myself, but there is something to. I've seen a lot of runners get stranded at second and third base. It would not shock me. And the last run we scored last night was actually on a 2-out rally to get Bo Bichette his RBI in this game. And you can't rely on that. 2-out rallies don't come along all the time. The small ball thing looked like it was working, but the small ball thing only works for this Blue Jay lineup if they're bringing those guys around from scoring position. Another 2 for 10 night with runners in scoring position does not move the needle for this ball club to be able to be a contender, especially when you're not hitting home runs. So, but yeah, extra base hits are a wonderful thing, but the back-to-back doubles with 2 outs were the reason the Blue Jays scored their third run last night. And that was a rope that Alan Roden hit into the gap, which was followed by a Bo Bichette, line drive right down the line in third base. Banked around in the corner, scored the run. It's exactly the kind of thing you hope for. But 2 outs, relying on back-to-back doubles. I'm thankful that it happened because it did put the Blue Jays up at that point, 3-0. But as I mentioned, or 2-0, I mean, but at that point, you get the Mets come roaring back an inning later because the bullpen could not hold it. If this bullpen's going to be this way, the offense is going to have to do much better to turn around and be able to be this ways. So, anyways, Let's talk the Blue Jays closing out this series in the Queens and getting the heck out of there. So, Blue Jays are currently 5-4, 5-3 for the Mets. We are going to get Bowden Francis, who had an amazing outing his last time out. Through was it 5 innings again, a no hit ball? But then he gave up back to back home runs. So those are the only 2 runs and only 2 hits he actually allowed in his 6 innings the other day. He scattered some walks. I'm hoping that gets down a little bit, but he's going to be facing David Peterson, the lefty 29-year-old from the Mets, who had a really good outing in his last outing. 6 innings, 2 earned runs, 9 strikeouts. Pretty impressive. So could be another rough one for the Blue Jays, especially lefties. They don't seem to be able to handle as well. But today being a day game, I would assume we're also going to get Tyler Heineman on the backside of that for catching his battery mate Bowden Francis. We'll see what happens, but that's how things go, Blue Jays fans. And we're going to be here talking all things, Vlad contracts, everything we can on Jay's latest, and we'll have a great time doing it. If you have any questions, hit us up on social media, on the YouTube channel, on the comments, and we'll chat with you, and we'll have a good time. Let's go, Blue Jays, and have a great day.